Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. It's David Baer here, and today we're going to be talking about influence and the idea of how you influence somebody's perception of you as an individual, as a professional. And because I'm not the most well-versed expert in this topic, thankfully, we have somebody who is. That someone is joining me from the other corner of the US, down in Orlando, Florida. That's Josh Elledge. Hey, Josh, welcome.
David, it's great. It's nice to be known as the most well-versed person on this topic. Thank you. Very, very generous of you.
Indeed. You and I have been chatting a little bit around the idea of influence and what that means. You have been working through this concept of utilizing podcasts to create relationship and influence, and you've been doing it for quite a while now. More recently, in recent years, as a service for others and a trainer of others. But I want to actually go back to 2007 because I think that's about the time that you started in the podcasting environment. Maybe it's before that, but I wonder if
Yeah.
we might start back there and talk about why podcasting.
Yeah, OG podcaster. So back when I started podcasts, this was back in the day where there weren't podcasting services. I mean, so all there was just a standard, right, with RSS feeds. So, you could record your audio, convert it to MP3, upload it to a server, and then create an RSS feed. And you'd have to manually hand code that RSS feed to produce or make that feed available. Then you'd submit to the current aggregators at the time, which was pretty much just Apple, if I recall correctly. So yeah, that was the way and all I was really doing was, it wasn't like, welcome to the Josh Elledge podcast. It was, I was already doing radio segments. And so I just got really, really adamant about capturing everything that I do, right? And so I would record my radio segment, edit that down, and then add that to the podcast. I think if you still search around, you could still find my own radio segments. I'm not saying they're very good, but at least I was willing to show up and serve. But yeah, that's dating me. That's back in 2007. Since then, I've done probably close to 3,000 podcast episodes, just myself hosting. And so I love the platform, and there are, holy cow, there's so many amazing opportunities and benefits for leaders that truly step up and leverage what I believe is the ultimate platform for high value networking.
Okay, I want to have you back up that last statement because, I started the last question by saying why podcasts? And I think I know a little bit of the answer you're going to give, but why is it the ultimate platform as opposed to other places that people could show up?
Yeah. Well, I think if it comes back, I will take a step back and let's talk philosophically about, especially for leaders that are responsible for growth. And I'm talking, I'd say, especially at you or anyone who is not you, Dave, but, to our friend that's listening, if you are a founder, if you are a CEO, that is your moral obligation, is to create impact in the world and grow your company. So what are the best ways to do that? Well, certainly not, again, violating E-Myth rules. Like, if you start a pie company that you're going to be back in the kitchen making all the pies, that's not what CEOs are supposed to do. CEOs are supposed to be out there advocating, making change, making impact in the world. And yes, obviously attracting and growing business. And I believe that the most effective way to grow a company today is who, not how. It is your network. It is your high value relationships. Who are you collaborating with? Who truly trusts and appreciates the work that you do? Because if that number is teeny tiny, well, you just don't have as much in the world and in your network that you can leverage. But if you have a lot of people who see you in that light, I'm just going to tell you from experience, life is a lot easier when you've got, let's even break this down to, and I'm going to answer your question. We'll just talk very specifically about podcasting here and why podcasting fits better than all. But imagine that you're a local realtor, right? And you've got two people that know who you are and what you do and would recommend you. Again, how are you going to get all your business? Well, you're going to have to do a lot of work.
Yep.
As opposed to if you have 200 people in your local market that when asked, who do you know that's in our local market that you think is good at real estate? David, it's game, set, match at that point. You just simply don't need to work very hard. Now, what I'm explaining is not going to happen overnight. And so for the business adults in the room, you know that, and you're okay with that. You're okay with this being a process, right? Our influence, our authority, our network is not going to grow overnight. So anyone that's promising you easy automatic riches is totally bypassing what I've come to believe is most honest leaders who've been in this space for a long time know to be true, right? It's all about your network is your net worth. So let's go back to podcasting. Let's think about this for a second. So in podcasting, and again, I would assume that the person, our friend that's listening to us right now, probably has listened to a lot of other podcasts in their time. Okay. Think about the quality of the individuals that participate in podcasting. Okay. The scammy, spammy marketers don't really it's the closest thing, in my opinion, to a true meritocracy, because either a guest or a host is going to survive and thrive based on their ability to convey value. And all of us can tell when we're listening to someone that's just blowing smoke and selling at us. We know what that feels like. And by the way, all audiences do today. Most audiences are quite perceptive. And so scammy marketers know that. So they're afraid. They're afraid to go out into a world where they can't control the narrative 100%. They have to rely upon the value and the integrity of their message to their audiences. Okay. So as a result, podcasting as a whole tends to attract high value, collaboratively minded people that are generally pretty good at what they do. This is a high caliber crowd. Now, how are you participating with, this network of high caliber leaders? Well, you might want to just be a guest on podcasts. I think that's very exciting, and I think you should do that, right? And you can also participate as a host. Now, let me share with you some observations about that world, because up until 5 years ago, I was a host, right? And my company, my influence, we were helping connect our guests with guest opportunities to be a guest on a podcast. And there are a lot of great shows out there. And I think you should do this, right? I think guesting on podcasts is exceptionally valuable because, again, you're bringing your message to the world. I think that the results probably have more in line with what you would expect to get from really great SEO work, because, again, just the nature of how this content is consumed, how people find it, it's a great long-term strategy. But what I don't want you to underestimate is the relationship of the people you get to meet, right? And I've got a lot of illustrations about this because, again, my background is in media consulting and training. And in addition to podcasting, I've been in the media more than 2,500 times, right? So that has forwarded me opportunities to connect with like-minded individuals in green rooms, in speaker lounges and that sort of thing. And I can tell you this, the networking in the green rooms and the VIP lounges and all this is it is absolutely the number one reason I used to go and speak at events. It was just for the people the other speakers that I could meet. It's because the quality of networking is so good with somebody that's willing to do that type of work. Like if they're truly, genuinely interested in serving and impacting an audience, those are good people I want to hang around with us. Now let's talk about hosting for a second, because when you are the host of a podcast, now you're kind of coming into this world, and you've got you've got different indicators of credibility, right? Because you're not just coming in wanting to work your way onto other people's stages. You are willing to participate with your own stage, which allows you to lead with a give rather than only with an ask slash give, right? For most guests. So when you have a show, right, this allows you to skyrocket your influence and authority and network like nothing else I've seen on the planet. And if I could, let me illustrate what this looks like. You start a podcast and you could talk about whatever you want. And you can, within reason, invite guests about anyone you want as well. And because of the existing and always has been existing supply demand gap in the podcast guesting world, right? You're going to take advantage of a major supply demand gap that is going to work in your favor if you are a host. And what I'm talking about is that for every decent interview podcast out there in the business world, David, I think you realize, this full well, there are literally thousands of potential guests that you could connect with and you could build a relationship with, and you could do something very nice for. Now, this is interesting because these are the exact same leaders that spammers and lead gen amateurs are tripping over themselves to try and spray and pray and inundate inboxes and email boxes and voicemails and anywhere else they can try to just blanket the airwaves with noise so they could sell their thing. These are the exact same people. But again, a la the go-giver, Bob Berg, if you're willing to lead in generosity, guess what you're going to earn? You're going to earn not necessarily a sale, but you're going to earn a friendship. And you're going to earn a relationship. And again, relationships matter in business. And you could have a number of different outcomes, which again, I'm going to take a break and take a drink of water while I pause on that thought and kind of let you catch up to what I've dispensed thus far.
Well, there were like 18 different follow-up questions that you
there we go.
prompted with all of that.
I figured we were due.
But I did hear a word that you used twice in there, collaboration, which I think is an important one to circle back on. And then the other piece, which you've been talking about in and out, is the start of the relationship and the ability to leverage a relationship. And the fact that this is a relationship, you and I met once in passing about 2 years ago. We were both participating in somebody else's event, and I think maybe we chatted for 3 minutes. But the value that you've described there in the green room and the speaker's lounge setting is the same sort of value that you get when you go to a conference and you're not sitting in session, but you're out in the hallway or at the bar or at dinner with somebody and developing relationship. And I have found, I believe that we're on episode 220 something, I can't remember off the top of my head, that a lot of the benefit of having these interview conversations, to your point, happened at the beginning and the end of the interview, where there's a lot more stuff that our audience doesn't hear, which is really about us getting to know each other even more.
Yeah, what you're describing, I like to call a whisper network. Whisper networks are how adults do business. And what I mean by that is, you've heard of these illustrations. Oh, the real business gets done on the golf course. The real business gets done in the, in the lounges and the quiet conversations in the hallway. It's true. It's absolutely true. The amateurs are constantly trying to bum rush people and slap business cards in people's hands. And they do that either physically or virtually. Man, if they do it physically in person, it's really awkward. But when they do it in the DMs and the email, it's just annoying. Or they're low key selling to their family and friends on social media. Like these people are just like constantly nonstop selling on social media. Listen, I don't begrudge them. I don't think badly of them. I just think that that's what they believe they are supposed to do. And that is a necessary evil to do what you really, really want to do in business. And I outright reject that, because I absolutely believe that if you are willing to show up in a generous fashion, you can spend all of your days with amazing, like-minded, collaborative leaders. And every day can feel like just a joy. No more awkward lead gen, no more awkward sales conversations, no more awkward following up. Hey, you ready to buy? Like, you don't have to do any of that nonsense. The way that business leaders do business with one another, first off, I'll tell you how they recognize one another is generosity. Do you speak the language of generosity? Because if you do, we're all going to hear it really quick. If you don't, and you're just a pushy salesperson, we're also going to hear that too, right? And by the way, I want to acknowledge that what I'm talking about might fly in the face of someone that's listening to me right now. And I acknowledge that all I am doing is sharing my point of view. It's not for everybody. So I acknowledge that there are differing points of view. And so I'm just going to advocate for the way that I like to do business, because I tend to be one of those people that I would say is probably a little bit maybe oversensitive to, now I've been in those uncomfortable sales conversations. I really don't like it. I also would feel so uncomfortable if someone said, yes, you're going to get 10 minutes of stage time and you got to do your best pitch. You got to sell these people. Like, there's no way on the planet I am the right guy for that kind of position. I am the kind of guy, it's like, I'm just going to treat people like I want to be treated, like an adult. I want to just give generously and just trust people. Like, if they resonate with what I'm saying, they know how to find me. If they don't resonate with what I'm talking about, that's fine. I'm totally okay with that, right? So I just want to throw that little disclaimer out there.
I would say that there's the way that I consume podcasts, and there's plenty that are, on video. You can watch them on YouTube and all of that, this one included. But I consume them with my earbuds while I'm out walking, and it's a very intimate way to consume content, right? So
Yes.
I'm getting a feeling of who that person is. And I have had people reach out to me, say, I heard you on your podcast or as a guest on a podcast, and I loved what you said about this, that, or the other thing. And I'd love to. Now, this is one of my least favorite phrases, pick your brain, but ultimately, right, it could lead to a client relationship, and hopefully I navigate that skillfully enough that it does. But that's a way to really, I think, make a connection. And so the fact that you pointed out, this is your approach, this is this is your philosophy, well, that pushes away some people, but they were never going to be a good fit for you in the first
Totally.
place.
Yes.
And it pulls
perfect
other
filter.
people closer.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I trust that. In fact, we're going through like some branding stuff on describing our user journey as, kind of this theme park experience where I go to theme park. I live in Orlando, right? So I love going to theme parks because I love to escape the daily rigmarole, the daily day-to-day grind and that sort of thing. I go there to leave the world behind, right? And so that metaphor we're actually using to describe our user journey when people get started with us is, you're going to go to this land, and then you're going to go to this land and this land. And and as we were talking about this as a team, I think we all kind of collectively brought up, it's like, you know what? There's going to be people that are not going to resonate with this, and they're going to think it's too frivolous and silly, right? And I'm going to say, good. Then we know that was not a really great fit for us to work together. So yeah, no, there's something to be said for that. But I want to point this out because I just want to make sure I put a cap on this, right? When you are a host in the podcasting world, and you've got, for every decent interview show, you've got thousands of potential guests, David, it's a good feeling because, again, supply and demand doesn't it feel good when people want to come and spend time with you? Like, when you're the host, you have an unending line of people wanting to spend time with you. So I'll get very tactical about what we do from a business development standpoint, but I will tell you that I have been 100% inbound for all my influence as of when we're recording this for 4 years, 4 months, and 5 days. It was November 20th, 2019 is, when we had over 60 people booking calls with me. Now, the first call is a podcast, and it's me engaging in an active service. I'm going to do great leaders, collaborative, generous leaders. I'm going to do really nice stuff for them, and I am willing to invest in those relationships. And because I'm willing to do that, I have an unending line of people that I get to build new relationships with. And then I truly do the guest a solid. I'm going to take really, really great care of them. I'm going to give them an exceptional guest experience, right? And then when we're all done with it, I'm going to extend an invitation 95% of the time, say, I really love what you do. Listen, let's chat next week and see if there's something we should be doing together. I've got great audiences. I don't know if it makes sense for us to partner in some way. I don't know if I can help in any way. You're welcome to learn what my superpowers are. I don't know if that might be valuable for you or a friend or whatever. Happy to help. And I'm okay with however that looks. Now, think about that experience from a guest perspective. Do I feel sold at? No way, right? I feel like, oh, good. Now, if I could be very, very frank, here is my main goal when I am building relationships through generosity and platform is I don't want them to say, I'm not trying to talk anyone into doing business with me, but my hope is I can move them to this feeling, belief, or statement. Oh, good. Now I have a friend who does what you do. That's my number one objective with everybody that comes into my world. Oh, good. Now I have a friend who does what you do. That's all I care about. And if I can get a couple of hundred people to believe that, remember what I was talking about earlier with the realtor? It's game, set, match. And I know, because I know that the value, I know the power of networks are so important. You, in the beginning, when this way of doing business might feel inefficient. And some people might look at this and go, oh, I'm at any sales this month. No, that's true. You might not. Okay, but here's what's going to happen. When you keep giving into an industry or a space or your customer's world like this, and I say customers plural, right? You will get to a point. And again, please accept this as someone who's done this over 1,900 times. You will get to a point where you will not be able to outgive the market. Generous leaders win. We all know what you want before you even open your mouth. So you might as well lead with love and generosity because people are going to feel it out anyway. And we want to do business with people that care more about, with the people that care about us.
So I want to share this from the host perspective because I think you're right. I am inundated with nonstop requests to be a guest here, and some of them are come across as a lot less sincere than others. And so I have to filter every request, and it's clear to me that some have a very, very clear agenda, and sometimes it's to sell to my audience, sometimes it's to sell to me, sometimes it's not a fit at all and they didn't do any research. It's just they hired somebody to do outreach, and so even though I say I interview a certain type of profession, I get all kinds of people asking to be on the show. So those are automatically like I get rid of them, or I just ignore them because I in a quick look I can say, oops, you're not following the rules. I'm not gonna even dignify this with a response. So there is still that kind of spamminess even in this space.
Oh, absolutely.
But to your point, I have developed so many fantastic relationships with guests, some of whom I think they come on and they say I'd love to see where things may lead, and some who actually come on and say I heard you during the conversation, and then they go into pitch mode. Not a lot of those, but I love the way that you frame it because you approach it as if, look, we may or may not be able to help one another. And I'd love to have a further conversation to see where things go, or how I might be able to help you. And there's something very genuine about that approach that you're taking, rather than I heard you say something I wanted to circle back on because I think I may have a solution for you. Let's get on a call so I can show you exactly how my program works that I'd like to sell to you, which is basically that's not what you're saying.
And I hear that, I'm like, oh, you were so close and then you screwed it up. Yep. I wish you didn't do that, because we all know how that feels, right? Does anybody really like feeling like a piece of meat, or just someone's lead? Like, that's one word that we're really careful not to use in our world, is referring to humans as leads, because it just feels icky, awful. And I don't think anybody wants to feel like anyone else's lead, right? Yeah, but to your point, David, again, it is so audacious to presume that you know what someone else's intention is around your product or service. Listen, I get that we all feel like our product is the best thing in the world. I get that there might be some urgency with that because we know that there are consequences to people not using our product or service. Okay. But they're not at that. Your guest or your friend or your contact or your audience member is just likely not at that level of belief. They don't know what you want. They don't know what you know. So the best thing you can do is just offer. It's like, listen, if my next door neighbor, like if I were amazing at cultivating tomatoes, for example, and I saw that my friend just got a couple of tomato plants, I say, I don't know if you know this about me. Like, I am a total nerd about raising tomatoes. Like, I've actually gotten pretty good at it over the years. Let me know if I can help or anything like that. Like, I don't need to sell my tomato growing services. Now, if I did have tomato growing services, the way that I would earn that trust is I would demonstrate it with my willingness to just give and serve without expectation of return, a la the go-giver. Now, I know for certain what somebody is thinking right now. Well, if I give away all my time, no one's ever going to pay me money. Okay, here's the deal. Here's the reality of that. Okay, and again, I've been testing this this is the way I've always done business. And I can talk about how I did this to get, my 2,500 media appearances, but it's the same thing. Leaders, true adults and leaders who are, again, I'm not talking about the scarcity-minded funnel bros, right? I'm not talking about them. God bless them. They're at a different stage in business right now, I believe, right? It's just a different kind of thing. So I'm not very good at speaking that language. I speak my language very well. And my language is, here's what I've seen about leaders. Leaders, say, David, say, for example, let's say you were a web design optimization person, for example, and let's say, Josh, listen, I'm glad that we've gotten to meet each other. Would you be okay if I shared a couple of things that I noticed on your website, and I'd be delighted to share with you even how to fix that or whatever? I'd be like, absolutely, right? And again, do that. Okay, there's going to be a point, David, where I'm going to be like, listen, there's that reciprocity, right? Leaders are, what I find is most, unless you come across the scarcity, bro-y, salesy kind of folks, right? True leaders are just not going to let you go too far. They're going to say, David, listen, you've been insanely generous. What can I do for you? That is almost always going to happen when you're working with people that have been around a little bit of time. Like you can tell, like they're givers, like they're generally good at what they do. They're well respected in their industry. They're usually not going to take from you. Amateur tire kicker entrepreneurs sometimes get caught up in the other energy, which I would contrast it to say it's a little bit more scarcity minded, right? It's about me, it's about what I want, and so because of that, they're afraid to lead with too much generosity, right? Again, trust the process. You're going to get to a point where you won't be able to outgive the market.
We have just about 2 or 3 minutes left, and I want to circle back to one thing. I had originally wanted to talk a little bit about the perception that somebody develops as a result of this authority. I think you've demonstrated that beautifully. So let's skip over that because I want to get one other point made here. We've been talking so far mostly about the guest and or host developing a relationship, about doing business with one another. But that's not the only path that a new relationship could take. And I wonder if you might take a couple of minutes before we wrap up to talk about some other possible paths that might result from a new relationship like this.
Might result from or to that relationship.
Well, if so, you and I, are talking today, and we may get together again next week to have a follow-up conversation. I may not become your client, you may not become mine, but there might be other variations on that theme. What might those look like?
Well, right. So Here's another downside to this, right? Now I want to address, you do need to have some filters in place, right? Because you can't give the farm away to everybody. So you need to understand who your audience is. Like if someone calls me, they're baby brand new entrepreneur and they want to pick my brain, I'm just going to apologize and say, I'm so sorry. I'm really not set up for that. I don't think that I'd really be able to help you. Now that said, I have all these free resources and free videos and stuff like, please absorb that. But you have to set up filters, right? And I have teams that anyone who books with me are going to try to figure out what is wanted here. And they're going to, going to preempt that a little bit, just so I make sure that I'm spending my time with the right people. Bob Berg, the founder, right? The who gave birth to this concept of the Go-Giver, has very strict filters in place with his generosity. Now, that said, outcomes. Okay, to presume that the best possible outcome is that this other person might be your product, might buy that the best possible, sorry, I said that incorrectly. To presume that the best possible outcome of your new friend would be they're going to buy my thing, it would be way, 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 way under it. Like it could be way better than that. Right? It could truly be a 1 + 1 = 11 kind of environment, right? But because you presumed that they're only just a buyer of your thing, that's really selling short the possibility, right? Because I have relationships that we have done probably close to 7 figures in business together. Oh, I know there's been people that we've done that, right? And I know full well there's people that we've co-created that. So don't sell this relationship. Don't sell any relationship short. My relationship with my wife is worth way more than one sale, right? It's like that relationship is crazy valuable to me. So I'm always just going to, like leaders do, just explore, right? If you were on a panel with someone at an event, you got to know each other and you're like, hey, I really like what you guys are doing. I don't know if you have time to grab coffee or, maybe jump on a Zoom call or something like that, but I'd love to learn more. I don't know if I can help in any way, but happy to see. And that's all you have to do. And for those of people who are concerned about not having the right closing tactics or, using NLP sales language, man, look, I'm not saying that stuff is bad. I'm just saying we all know what it is. So if you want, we all know what you're doing, right? And we also all know your intention. So I'm just going to say from now on, please move forward with a pure heart, because we're all going to be able to read that. Audiences have never been more sophisticated. People have never been more skeptical and or guarded about being sold at. So you may as well just work with people in the way that you would love to be worked with.
So I think probably at this point, folks have been listening to you and have a clear sense of where you're coming from. And for those who might be interested in continuing down the path of Josh Elledge and the journey that you bring people on, where could they learn more about you?
Yeah, well, listen, I'll tell you the first thing, if you want the fundamentals, go read The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. There's so many great teachers out there that I have studied and just really tried to live in integrity with. Again, this generosity mindset. Another one, who, not how. That's a newer one for me. Yep. Just anything that has to do with the power of networks and human connection relationship, right?
And I think that's Dan Sullivan, if I remember.
Yes, yeah, Dan Sullivan, right? Yeah. So it's generally, again, the biggest solutions to your problems are going to be a who, not a how, right? So everyone is like looking for tactics. Like, listen, you gotta get comfortable with the fact that it's going to be a people thing. Right. And many people make light work, and many people make huge impacts in the world together. Together, we're stronger. Right. Now, that said, if you want some very practical, tactical suggestions on how to implement that, come search me up on Google. My name is Josh Elledge. You can go to my website, which is www.upmyinfluence.com. And if you go to that website, I'll teach you this stuff for free. Certainly if there's opportunity for us to engage, you'll see all that. But honestly, the more time you spend in this, I think the more you're going to appreciate how much fun business can be day to day. No more icky stuff, no more awkward situations. Show up in integrity, show up in generosity, and you can design just a day-to-day business that you will just absolutely love, because you get to spend a lot of great time with cool people doing great business together.
I love it. It's the Gospel of Business Relationship Building by Josh Elledge, and I'm so glad that it's brought you to this conversation today. Thanks so much, Josh.
It's been an honor, David. Thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. Folks, if you know somebody who could benefit from listening to the conversation you just heard, and I'm pretty sure you do, please send them our way. Until next time, I'm David Baer, and this is More Perfect Marketing. Take care.